The following story has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
Shavuos is a time to express some simcha, some feeling, some emotion. To become, you know what that emotion has to be? Your neshama. To feel your neshama. Hashem wants us to feel our neshama and to feel alive. And the Torah is Kehem Chayenu. The Torah is our life. I once in my life witnessed a physical power of the joy of Torah. There was a Yid who lived in Eretz Yisrael. His name was Reb Michal Feinstein. Did you hear of him? What was he? He was an Adim of the Brisker Rav. He was one of the giants from the Miri Yeshiva in Europe. He was known throughout Europe as a Shem Dover. He eventually settled in Eretz Yisrael, and he had a large kollel and a wonderful family, Chil, and he had sons and daughters, and he had a daughter, a very special young lady who suffered from asthma. So they bought nebulizers, a number of breathing machines to have in the house for people with asthma, and you get them hooked up to the nebulizer, the breathing machine, and they put through. You have one, Gil? No? Baruch Hashem. You should never need one. And they was spread around their house. They didn't have a gigantic house. It was an apartment. And one day their daughter started to breathe. Summer, started having a difficult time breathing. So they could not find the nebulizers. They didn't have one, they were Briskers. So they bought 3, just to make sure. Hashem did not want them to find any one of them. And she expired. A young girl, 19, 20 years old. It was heartbreaking. So full of life. And it was by the Levaya. And I had never seen Remichel. So that Sukkot, I decided I wanted to have the zchus of meeting him. So I went to visit him in Bnei Brak, and I came to his sukkah. It was like Shkia time. And I asked somebody, "Where's your Michal?" He said, "Your Michal's in the sukkah." I approached the sukkah, and outside the sukkah was standing Rosh Yeshiva of Lakewood. Today's Rosh Yeshiva of Lakewood. Rabbi Malkiel Kotler. And I went over to him, it's a Shalom Aleichem. I said, "Is it possible for me to visit your father-in-law?" And he said, "It's very difficult." So why? He says it's extremely emotional. I said, "From what?" "From the death of his daughter in the summer." Talking like 2 months later. And he's struggling. And the only thing that maintains his equilibrium is Torah. Torah, most people can't learn if they emotionally distraught. So I said, could I go into the sukkah if I don't say anything to him? He said, yes, you can go. So I went into the sukkah. He was sitting at the head of the table. He was learning Gemara with the niggin. I'll never forget. Sweet niggin. Well, somebody would say, the sweetest of the sweet. And he had this big beard. He had a nice hadras upon him. And I sat down, took a chair in the sukkah, and I was looking at him. And he was going the Gemara line by line, speaking it out, teaching it, explaining it. It was something to see. Maybe, I don't know how many minutes went by, he took notice of the fact that I was there. And he said, "A good moed." I said, "Shalom Aleichem." "A good moed, Zayich." And he looked at me, like he took his eyes out of the Gemara. And suddenly, his whole face scrunched up into a cry. I'll never forget watching that face like just fold up like this and start to cry. And he said to me, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. He said, I had a tragedy and it's hard for me to deal with it. And the only thing that gives me chiyas and simcha is Torah. Lulei seros chal shashuai. Is that not for the Torah of my delight, I'd be lost. I said, go back to learning. He said, excuse me. Went back to learning in 1 second. I'm like nothing ever happened. I said, it was like a shot in the arm for the man. It was like the man was attached to Chaim Alei. I said, I can't imagine a human being coming to such a level. It was Ki'eim Chayenu V'Yirchemenu Kipshute. And he was able to get so in touch with his neshama that any sadness that his guf felt was pushed away, and his neshama took over, and he was back with Hashem, and Menuchas HaNefesh, Simchas HaNefesh, and Simchas HaYantif. Ashreinu Matev Chalkein.
Enjoyed this story? Come again. Bring a friend. StoriesToInspire.org